Hello, welcome to another video of mine. Um, Today we're going to talk about paganism. Um, so, not a lot of people have heard of paganism, well, at least in the mainstream. And I guess what I would like to touch on today is how it came to be. Um, I think I think a lot of people they know they have a good grasp of how Christianity came to be, how Judaism came to be, how Islam came to be. Um, but paganism doesn't get the fold, and for good reasons. Because the takeover of Christianity in the 13th century of Europe, um, that was a major part of it. Um, but we won't go into that today. So we'll just stick with the the origins of paganism. Heathens. We was heathens and shit. All right. Um. So I guess okay. So we'll start off with so the Stone Age man. Um. He wasn't like people. I think people back then had the same IQ as us and can grasp things the same amount as us. But the thing is, they didn't know, like, they didn't have subjects like as science or um, math or geometry or anything like that to explain. Like, they didn't have words to explain things. They didn't have subjects to explain. I maybe word it this way: they didn't have subjects to explain things. So instead of a mathematician seeing, like, if he goes in the forest and he sees two trees, he'll say that one and that one equals two trees, right? Where a Stone Age man will have a different view of it. He will say these these trees are um, are guided by winds or something, and but yeah, okay, all right. Maybe that was a bad example. All right, I'll start with this. So when the Stone Age man looked at the sky, he didn't know how like the sun moved. He didn't have anything to explain the wind blowing in the trees, and he didn't. He 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 knew the seasons came, and he knew what kept him warm and what he needed to do for the seasons, but he didn't know why the seasons came to be. He didn't know that the earth came around and rotated, and only a certain, the sun shone at this. You got the you got more sunlight this time of year as opposed to another time of year because it was the angle and the earth tearing. Like, he didn't have any of that knowledge. So he relied on sorcery as kind of like this, like the winds like controlled everything. So the winds pushed the sun from setting from the east to the west, um, and uh, the winds blew the trees, and he couldn't really describe the winds, what caused them. So kind of like it's almost like it was magic. It was magic that was blowing the trees in the wind, and it was spirits, or it was a really spooky term. How you explain things, but that's what it was, and that's kind of how he grasped the world, and that's how he understood the world. And also, when he blew on a feather, or if he blew on a fire, he like on the embers, he lit it up, and he realized that he had whatever this winds or spirits, he had it within him as well too. It wasn't just the external world, but it was also him. So in a way, he didn't really recognize the world as duality. He recognized the world as him, that he was material. He was a conscious, you could say, a conscious material acting in the world, but not as a duality, but as one with it, and how he can understand and grasp it and use that to his advantage, as opposed to this duality of having a subject matter to explain certain things and this is how it is and all that stuff. Um, so so with the seasons that came, um, you had winter that brought in cold, and also it brought in certain animals too. So it brought in like wolves and bears and all those nasty animals, and they they knew that it came at a time of winter, and winter was a horrible time, obviously, especially when you're living in Stone Age or pre-Iron Age. Um, so he he had to. They thought, okay, so this is like some sort of winter spirit, right? And with this winter spirit brings in these horrible animals that will kill you. So he believed that um, these animals were part of the winter spirit. So this wolf and this bear were part of the winter spirit, and they had rituals where they would go out and they would hunt these animals, and they once they hunted them and killed them, they took the hide and then drank the blood and then wore their hide, and then they became a thing. It's a term called berserks, and they thought they when when they drank in the blood and when they put on the hide, they had the spirit of winter in them. They had that nastiness in them, that nasty spirit, winter spirit in them, to go and hunt more. So these were, I guess you call berserks. Um, it's quite fascinating. Um, so yeah, so that's the idea that they had. Another thing too, with with this understanding, there were people who, I guess, specialized in it. Then they had other, um, they observed different things in nature where they had a cause and effect as well, and not just superstition, but that was part of it. Um, so I guess this was kind of, it wasn't really superstition, but it's not as precise as we like to think of it today. But um, so, like, if for example, in the summer, um, just before it rains, frogs croak. So if they needed rain for their crops, they would have things like, there's these sources that came out, and they would try to make these frogs croak. I was like, oh, we need some rain, and then it would eventually rain, but they weren't quite sure if it like worked or not. So, um, but it still worked in a mysterious way. They couldn't like pinpoint it with like how long, or because they didn't have like conception of time either. So they just thought, well, okay, I guess if you try to make this, if you do this to this frog, it'll croak, and so making it croak will make it rain. Like it wasn't, it was kind of like if you eat ice cream, there's a shark attack. It is not necessarily, there's a correlation, but that's not necessarily need a causation. So it's kind of one of those things. But yeah, so And from there, from observing this natural phenomenon, um, they uh, made deities out of these certain uh, natural phenomenon. So, like lightning, they had a god for lightning, had a god for a tree, which was called Balder. And when the lightning would strike Balder, um, there was a source of life that came into it that grew out a mistletoe, and this mistletoe would grow in, would start in the late fall and then early winter, and they believe that because like the mistletoe that you think of Christmas, right, where you hey, we're going to hang the mistletoe, right? Well, that's pagan. That's a pagan belief of the mistletoe. That's where it originally came from until Christianity took over. Damn Christians. Anyway, we will have our day. We heathens will have our day, and we will bring back our traditions. Yeah. Um, man, the holy world would be freaking awesome. Anyway, um, maybe that's another talk. Yes. So yeah, so that's kind of the original, and a lot of Greek gods came from this basic understanding of natural phenomenon. I think a lot of people know that already, but they don't know where it comes from. So I mean, that's kind of, I mean, I can go on forever, but I mean that's the original foundation of paganism, is this basically just kind of sorcery and man not really having subjects to explain natural phenomenon. So, um, I mean, I can go on and on forever, uh, but I think I'm gonna cut it here. But I won't leave you hanging. I do have a chant for you, a pagan chant, and I think you might like it. So, here you go. Hey Odin, Sa Odin, hey Odin, Sa Odin. Ah, 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 hey Odin, Sa Odin, hey Odin, Sa Odin, hey Odin, Sa Odin, hey Odin, Sa Odin. Ah, ah, ah. All right, I think that's good. All right, until next time, I will see you later.